we are not going to sell the individual, we're not going to sell piece hardware anymore, right? So in my opinion, I think the market will move beyond just to selling the GPU. So customer will looking for more like a, integrate with the AI solution, or you can go AI factory or from chip to grade. So this including your GPU system, this including the liquid cooling, power, and also networking storage and the deployment and the data center operations. I really believe that that's going to be very critical in the next 12 to 24 months. Say, you're not going to sell a single piece of hardware or infrastructure. You sell the integrated with the AI factory and the AI solution to your clients. Hi everybody, my name is Yong Tan. I'm the global director for AI system for data center from Supermicro. You are watching Data Center Go to Market podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Data Center Go to Market podcast. I'm Joshua Feinberg, host of the podcast and founder of the Data Center Sales and Marketing Institute. Today I'm being joined by Yong Tan from Supermicro. We're going to explore what happens when AI infrastructure demand collides with real-world constraints around energy, ecosystem coordination, buyer education, and go-to-market execution. Young's got a really interesting background because up until maybe 12 months ago, Young was working as a IT professional in the data center industry at places like Microsoft and other kinds of enterprise environments. So he really brings a unique perspective because few companies sit closer to the intersection of AI compute and high density infrastructure and the operational realities facing enterprise and hyperscale buyers today. Young, welcome to the show. Welcome back.
Hey, Joshua, thank you again for having me. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you.
I'm very excited to have you joining the podcast again as well. So, what are you finding has changed most dramatically in AI infrastructure over the past year?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting and moment for the AI infrastructure, or some folks call AI data center. So if I would say the most interesting or transformation is like the biggest shift is AI infrastructure is not just the one piece of the component. Historically, when we talk about the AI, people will still talk about the server, storage, individual component. For today, I see the big shift from the AI individual parts, like server storage, go to actually more like the whole ecosystem. This including your facility building, your IT gear, your power, your cooling. It's really like not a single piece of the hardware, right? It's more like an integrated solution uh, for the AI data center.
Are you finding increasingly that integration that used to almost always be done by integrators is being done more by companies like Supermicro because enterprises are demanding more of a single point of contact? Or do you still see huge opportunities for third-party companies, third-party integrators, and managed service providers and the like throughout your ecosystem?
Yeah, so 100% right. So I mean, from Supermicro, we are the company, we're specialized in high performing computing and GPU system. That's our core backbone. At the same time, we do provide the we call full stack of infrastructure solution for our customer, which means like beyond the IT gear, GPU, system. We do provide the cooling and the power solution for our customer. At the same time, we do understand it like this is such a dynamic ecosystem, right? No company can do everything by themselves, right? You definitely have the strategic partner, like who are going to do your general contract manufacturing, who are going to working with you on the site selection and also construction. It is a very ecosystem, but for Supermicro, we do plan to more like expand our portfolio beyond our IT equipment. And this is going to help us or help a customer to really deliver more like a turnkey solution, one-stop solution, for their deployment, from years to months. And, time to online is very key today. Also driving the integration efficiency for our customer for the equipment that the people spend hundreds of $1 million, for their equipment. Driving efficiency, driving time to online, and that's very key for today's AI DC.
You've mentioned when we've spoken before that energy is now as big an issue or almost as big an issue as ecosystem. Why do you think that when we look at 10 years ago that IT and hardware specifically was in a completely different world than energy? Why do you think we've ended up in this place now where ecosystem and energy are now becoming board level business issues rather than just engineering problems?
Yeah, so energy is getting more and more important in those days. So let me sit back for a moment, right? So think about like maybe 15 years ago or 20 years ago, even like 10 years ago, right? So the IT rack, traditional IT rack, their power could be just 20 to 30 kW per rack, integrated with all, computing storage together, right? Today, if you look at today's GPU rack, all for GB300 could be 150 already, 130. Next generation Ruby is like almost 200, even 250 kW per rack. So from power side on the rack level, the power density almost increased 10 times more. So which means like you need a much more smarter power, energy to, kind of, run the GPU system in your data center. Now, when we talk about the power energy, now there are two layers of the power and energy. One is definitely, great, right? So definitely like a lot of data center today is that cannot start because we don't have enough power to support the um, ongoing data center. On the other side is because of the AI consuming so much energy, and any energy help would be very, very helpful for how we can run the data center, 24 by 7 days, right? There's, in the AI data center, there's a very significant, revenue loss if there's any microsecond disruptive for the AI, training. So it's going to cause a lot of destruction for any company. So the energy, the base system, the power system is getting even more important, than before.
One thing that keeps coming up across the board is that no single company can solve these AI infrastructure challenges completely by themselves. And that certainly comes home very, very strong when we talk about what you were just mentioning with the intersection of hardware and GPUs and the increasing power density coming in racks and the need for continuous supply and data center power and data center energy and battery energy storage systems and all the different kinds of sustainability issues and alternate issues and behind the meter and off grid. What does ecosystem coordination look like for someone like yourself today in a sales leadership role at a company like Supermicro?
Yeah, it's very important to, for any, GTM, sales leader to understand the whole ecosystem, right? Like you said, there's no one person, one company can really do everything by themselves. It's really need this big ecosystem to, how we can integrate the solution from grounding to the deployment, right? So, I mean, again, Supermicro, we do very strong on our IT and GPU racks, and we do extend our portfolio more like a cooling and a power. But however, if you look at the data center ecosystem, you have like Powerland, you have the general contractor, also you have commission. It's really like also, we do working with a lot of what we call modular providers, data center provider, to pre-integrate and pre-testing with our gear into their modular. So by doing so, you can really speed up the deployment to the customer, and also simplifies the deployment at the on-site wise. So it is very dynamic, and also it's very important for all the key players that in the chain. I think I even remember like Jason Huang mentioned like at the GDC this year in March, what he said, very interesting to me. Say, hey, back to maybe 5 years ago, the company on his dashboard screens, nobody know each other, right? So they don't talk to each other, they don't work each other. But today, everybody working together, everybody working on the other ecosystem. That's really, say something like, from infrastructure, from the critical equipment and the ID gear, everybody is now working together.
And the spirit of working together, when you look at your goals, your commercial goals that you work on for Supermicro, how has energy availability become a GTM constraint? Are there really significant deals that you've worked on in the last several months that have been at risk because of energy issues?
So an energy issue is still the key or bottleneck. By the way, when we say energy, I mean, people say, "Oh, I have a power on the ground," but it's really depends on. I mean, is this behind the meter? Also how much you can actually utilize it for the AI DC, right? So sometimes people just, oh, I have 100 megawatts, power available, but that 100 megawatt available is that already energized already, or is this on pipeline? Because as you build a data center, you really want to 100% sure you have a very solid pipeline for your power. You don't want to put yourself in a position that you purchase like 100 of a million of the capital equipment is set in the data center, but you cannot power it on. So I do see some challenge, like for some data center, not in my direct account. So customer come to me say, hey, Yong, I want to have this GB300 system to build the data center, and how quickly you can give to us. So from our side, I can give the GB300 racks to them, maybe 6 to 9 7 to 9 weeks, right? Maybe maximum like 10 to 12 weeks. However, that when I go down to the deep, say, okay, how's your AI data center ready for the power? Do you have the generator? Do you have the base system? I mean, do you already have your cooling system ready here? So those things actually drag the whole schedule down. Is like they are the critical paths to really kind of extend the life cycle for the AI DC. And so I still believe, I mean, even I say this way, actually today's AI infrastructure, the bottleneck, it is not a GPU anymore. It is not a computing anymore. It's like a power and also critical infrastructure.
So, speaking to an audience of your peers that are in sales leadership roles and chief revenue, chief commercial, sales operations, is it to the point where energy is such a big deal as a risk or de-risk factor for enterprise deals? Is this something that there's a deal stage sitting in the CRM for doing diligence on the energy that's going to support this deal? And if so, how early on in the process is that typically addressed?
So this is a very, very good topic, a very good question, Joshua. So I just finished a meeting with the folks from Nvidia yesterday. So we literally touched this topic. Essentially, Nvidia. I mean, they have best resource globally to know which side, which location have the resource. And then Jason Huang has done the, I would say, excellent job to build a stronger ecosystem. So essentially, there's a dedicated team. Actually, I didn't know before. There's a dedicated team from Nvidia. They call AI DC Readiness Review. They go to the customer, whoever want to build a data center, say, okay, I'm going to come here to offer my help. I'm coming here to offer my knowledge to review your data center. Say, are you ready to host the NVIDIA GB system or Vera Rubin system? So they are working together right now for this. They call, an AIDC readiness checklist. Essentially, they want to help the customer say, if you want to deploy this amount of the data center in this time frame, you want to make sure you got your generator, you want to make sure you got your site, you're going to want to get make sure your facility. So this is like almost like a 300 checklist item, from Nvidia to help whoever want to build data center to make sure they can be always ready instead of for power is energy is definitely number one. They want to check. They definitely will check with the power energy. They also check with the electricity, IT or environment here. It is really like this whole system to help okay, to enable you can power a 500 megawatts or 100 megawatts. This is the due diligence you have to check. Also, this is schedule you need to manage it to make sure you get ready. And the energy, I'm guarantee you, is that's number one. They need to check.
So this due diligence function on energy readiness for the hardware is essentially going to be performed at scale by Nvidia before it even gets to an OEM like Supermicro?
Yes. So it's because I was very surprised they have this kind of a team. It's a sort of a new team, right? If you think about this logic behind, right? There was some situation. We deploy our data, we ship out our GPU to the customer side, but they're not ready. So the GPU system actually sit idle in the warehouse or waiting for another 4 weeks before we can bring on the floor. So that's a big this that's a big issue for any company spend maybe $100 million and put their capital sitting on the floor and doing nothing. So I think this is what Nvidia is looking for. They want to speed up their deployment for the GB300 as their system. So they do this proactively, or you can say moving left, so that all the pieces can move in together with the IT gear.
Yang, what do you think separates the companies from those that are actually ready for AI infrastructure versus ones that are thinking that they're ready for AI infrastructure? When you think about the end users, the enterprises that you work with on a regular basis, like what's that gap that determines whether they're actually ready versus they only think that they're ready?
I think the biggest gap is it is because they don't have a good I would say understanding how today's IT infrastructure, particularly on the power and the cooling side, how massive the power or reliable that is the AI data center need to be ready. So a lot of I would say a lot of some company they know some company folks they do know well. Okay, they Vera Rubin GB300 this high density power racks. They understand what's the requirement, but most of folks are still don't have the good understanding. Okay, what's the power consumption for per rack, right? And also I believe you heard about it, maybe the Nvidia, the 800 voltage DC. Now, if you want to host the GB Vera Rubin for next generation, your whole power system will be different than what you did before. So a lot of people still don't have that good understanding. Okay, what does that mean for my critical infrastructure? Instead of just I think I'm ready. But until they plug in and play the GPU system, didn't work. If it worked, but it's not a maximal efficiency for their IT system.
It sounds like this introduces a big need and big opportunity for someone like yourself and your colleagues to educate the clients proactively. But in this environment where buyer education and sales blind spots are all coming together, like a lot of infrastructure buying now happens long before someone talks to sales. Technical buyers, IT professionals are more sales and marketing allergic than they've ever been at any previous point in their careers. In this kind of environment, how do you see buyer education changing? How are buyers educating themselves differently today?
Yeah, so the buyer education, I think it's super critical. Like from my side, I do have a good knowledge about the the IT side, and also I do have a good understanding of what's needed for the infrastructure. I think the biggest education for the buyer side is like uh, what's their business model they want to run for their business. So this is very interesting, right? Some folks come and reach out to me and say, "Yo, I want to buy the GB300 from Supermicro, and could you deliver for me?" So I normally, don't give that answer to them. Instead of I'm asking, "What's your business model you want to run for your data center? Are you going to run the business model with a colo? Are you going to run the business with the GPU servers?" Then I will ask them, "What's your working loading?" So it's really ask a lot of grounding question, and what's your deployment timeline, and how you want to monetize your capital, or are you going to own those equipment? Are you going to lease out? Um, it's not, instead of going deep down to the technical in the beginning, I'm more asking, okay, what's the business model you want to go, and what's your revenue generation you want to move forward, and also like do you have enough capital to really run this, instead of you maybe go to fund the by the way, also I'm asking a very key question: who are your potential customer, or do you have the off taker today? Because I want to build something for them, instead of there's no off taker for their data center. So it's a more like on this topic, I'm more like driving more like a business wise instead of product wise, because end of the day we want to deliver something for our customers so that they can generate their revenue for their customer, make a deal for the future.
Most data center GTM teams are flying completely blind. 83% of your buyer's journey is happening before they even speak with someone from your sales team. The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is powered by DCSMI. We've studied over 1,900 industry leaders to build a diagnostic framework that identifies exactly why deals fall apart and revenue stalls. Stop guessing and start benchmarking. Subscribe now to our weekly Data Center GTM briefing at www.dcsmi.com/briefing. Again, that's dcsmi.com/briefing, BRIEFING. It sounds like a lot of these topics, like business models, revenue strategy, monetization, capital, this sounds a lot more like what management consulting would have covered as recently as 5 or 10 years ago, certainly not in the domain of someone that would be an IT executive from a hyperscaler or working in a sales capacity. But that aligns very closely with what we're seeing, where the emergence of account executives and account managers transforming themselves to be seen more like teachers and consultants and subject matter experts and trusted advisors. What, from your perspective, Yong, what do you see sales teams consistently misunderstand about technical buyers?
I believe like that if we talk about technical buyer today, they still focus on the performance. Okay, how how great is this GPU system will looks like? So, I mean, I think those technical buyers still very focused on okay how the performance for the GPU system, what's the cooling temperature, I mean, what's the power density, I mean, this is all important, right? Don't get me wrong, right? So how you are going to, driving the power solution at the rack level, if your rack per rack is 200 kW. So this is all great question, comments there. But back to my original comments there. So today's AI data center is not just a single piece of the hardware. It is not a piece of like a storage, computing, or GP300 only. It's like a data center. Actually, it is a product. It's integrated products. Say, okay, how you are going to build up a data center can really kind of monetize your capital expense in next 5 to 10 years. As integrated with your power, cooling, and your IT gear. I think that's a big blind spot for a lot of like technical buyers. Say, okay, how great your products as a GPU performance, compared with our competitor in the market. Instead of ignore the total solution, integrate with the ecosystem to deliver the products to them as a whole package. That's a big blind spot for a lot of technical buyers.
It sounds like a lot of need to have situational awareness as to who the type of person is that you're having this conversation with, because there could be probably 5 or 10 different kinds of stakeholders that ultimately weigh on this, and everyone seems to have a different way of approaching all of this. With all of this in mind, what's the go-to-market motion that when you look around in the industry that everyone seems to keep repeating, even though it clearly isn't working anymore?
So, I mean, definitely, with all those big investment for your AI infrastructure, heavily capital, I would definitely strongly recommend that you have to go to C-suite people. You have to go to ask the CEO, CTO, or CFO, whoever have that strongly business mindset to say, okay, what's your business model? What do you want to what do you want to utilize your AI infrastructure to for the company, right? So that's a very critical say. Instead of go into detail to talk about the performance of the IT system, how great is my power solution, how great is my cooling solution. I mean, those all are going to figure out after we define what's the business model you want to go, how you want to monetize your capital in the long term. Are you going to do more like a colo business? Are you going to run for the GPU cluster as a servers? Are you going to just put the AI data center ready and be the host or landlord, or you want to build a whole full stack for your company from the hardware, software, infrastructure. It is very important to talk to those C-suite people, say what's their business model they would move forward, so that you can come out with the right solution for their business.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you're getting the question as well about colocation versus GPU as a service. About a year ago, we started getting quite a bit of that from owners of small colocation firms. And when I say probably small, like maybe 10 to 50 employees, that were all scratching their heads saying, this AI infrastructure seems to really be taking off. Should we also get into the GPU as a service business? And I said, if you're asking me for the go-to-market advice on it, talk to investors, talk to CFOs, talk to people with capital. Because if you think the co-location business is capital intensive, like, yeah, it's next order on GPU as a service.
No, you're absolutely right, Josh. Actually, I had a multiple conversation with some, I mean, medium-sized small company, their owner. Hey, how I should move forward. I mean, for me, it's not I give you an answer, but it's like what's the business model you want to do. So I mean, there's a multiple channel the multiple approach you can really go to this AI infrastructure business, right? But I also kind of be cautious to people who want to jump into this buzz to say, okay, hey, now everybody talk about AI infrastructure, everybody talk about Nvidia GB300. I better have something, but they have to be very careful. Say, hey, who is your who is your financial institute going to, working together with you to monetize those heavy capital equipment, right? I mean, if you talk about one rack of Nvidia GP300, that could cost you, few $1 million. That's quite a lot of expense, for any company, from 100 people to maybe 1,000 people. So it's very important to set upfront, say, what's my business model I want to do? What's my technical readiness, right? So I believe I used that analogy before, right? So let's say if if I am just the average driver, right? So I'm just a driver a car. I don't think I'm gonna go drive like a F1, right? Because even the best car, but I don't know how to drive faster enough. So evaluate yourself. What's your technology availability, or what's your technology readiness today? What's your strengths today? So don't jump into right away until you're understanding. Okay, this is challenging, this opportunity. Then with all those questions, you have to deal with the safe, you know, CEO level, CTO level people understanding, what's the company direction move on.
When we think about your observations on trends that you keep seeing pop up over and over again, what do you see as a go-to-market lesson that you've had to learn the hard way?
Uh, I think maybe the the saying like we jump to the too much technical discussion in the beginning. That's kind of like a go-to marketing or I was a mistake. Instead of like maybe we should ask what's your deployment plan? What's your uh again, what's your business model you want to move forward, and what's the solution we can provide to you. So it is really more like, okay, how we can integrate with a single piece, like we call building block here, how we can build in a building block solution or total solution for our customer, instead of talk about individual pieces. Also, talk too much the technical, before we go to before we go in there.
It's really fascinating that you bring that up because I wrote a narrative on this a week or two ago and called it the CEO demotion. You finally get the meeting with the CEO and you go in there and all you're talking about is technical data center specs.
Oh,
Like, oh, this is really important, Young. You should go talk to our director of infrastructure. Like, no, 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 wait, I want to talk to the CEO. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I've determined that you're talking about infrastructure. So yeah, you got to really know the audience. With all of this in mind, where do you think that GTM teams in the data center industry should be maintaining more direct ownership over their process as opposed to relying on outside outsourcing firms, agencies, outside channel partners? What do you think is integral to keep internally for you and your team members at Supermicro as opposed to working with third-party companies?
so in my personal humble opinion, I do believe the the AI infrastructure GTM strategy is so important. Why? Because it's going to make a huge difference for your company direction moving forward. At the same time, if you owe your own GTM team, you have more direct information from your customer instead of you have someone, either middleman or filter for you. So maybe folks have a different opinion here, but for me, I really believe like the company, whoever really serious about is their products, their GTM strategy, they need to have a very core team member know what's the direction that we should go, what the direction we should approach to our customer. Because at the end of the day, you are not just okay, try to connect to the customer. You really kind of help them and say what's the right product we need to give to our customer to solve their problem. So I would more lean to hold your key GTM activities in your company by yourself. And you maybe have some sort of a marketing, article, you can outsource something, but for everything that is direct to the customer, you got to be all by yourself.
Because that context is so core to understanding that client relationship.
Yeah.
Yong, when you look into your crystal ball, what changes do you expect that sales leaders, commercial leaders, revenue leaders, go-to-market leaders throughout the data center industry are going to see in the next 12 to 24 months that's going to impact their role, their clients most profoundly?
I mean, I think that this may be back to I think in the very beginning, we are not going to sell the individual. We're not going to sell piece hardware anymore, right? So, in my opinion, I think the market will move beyond just to selling the GPU. So, customer will looking for more like integrate with the AI solution, or you can go AI factory from grade to from chip to grade. So this including your GPU system, this including your liquid cooling, power, and also networking storage and the deployment and the data center operations. I really believe that that's going to be very critical in the next 12 to 24 months. Say, you're not going to sell a single piece of hardware or infrastructure. You sell the integrated with the AI factory and the AI solution to your clients.
The age-old challenge of the single point of contact. Very, very early on in my career, when I was doing fractional CTO work for small and medium-sized businesses, it was the single point of contact for anything and everything having to do with IT needs. So it's really interesting to see how full circle that's become in the AI factory era.
Yeah. If I could add one more, sorry, Josh, if I could add one more, which I think this is what I'm doing today, right? So you think about the ecosystem, right? So yes, I'm not going to sell the individual GPU system anymore. I'm selling the total solution. But you can imagine like whoever purchases this, huge amount of money for the capital, they need to fund their potential off-taker. So actually, I am doing some very, unique job that not many people do today. Say, hey, I'm going to help them to connect the potential off-taker. So this is one of the benefits for Supermicro because we have such a huge new cloud provider. We do deal with the hyperscaler. They constantly come to us to ask for more capacity. I mean, connected with the people with my customer in this case, they purchase the GP system from us. Also connecting with their potential off-taker is make a huge difference because they know, okay, once I build this data center form on my side, I have somebody will come over, take my business, take my data center, either have a 3 years contract or 5 years contract. That's going to make it very, very important, for people to say, okay, I think this is great. I want to build something. because I have some off-taker waiting for me, in 12 months there.
So you're being savvy about understanding the true life cycle of what's happening to that infrastructure to ensure that your end clients, whether it's an enterprise data center, whether it's a colocation operator or something similar to that, are seeing financial success so they can keep feeding their growth engine with expansion.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, the final area I want to ask you about today is, what do you think is the one thing that the industry still isn't paying enough attention to?
Pay not enough to, I don't know. I mean, I think it's still very AI data center is like getting so much popularity. Like a IT professional, you, me, right? So, uh, actually, I think this loudly. The other day, when I drove so By the way, so I always love to listen to the podcast. I mean, you are one of them. I do listen to the podcast, Wall Street Journal. There's episode is like basically maybe you should listen to, like I think it's Minnesota. It's Minnesota somewhere. Say the town reject a data center bill. So essentially, I think it's a 500 megawatt data center for whoever will take. But because for whatever reason, the environmental, I mean, local community or bad communication, right? With the engagement with the towns, they finally turn down the bill for the data center. I think one of the mistake, which is not a mistake, something we ignored here because we are so in the circle by ourselves. But imagining all those big data center were built at somewhere. So there's still a lot of misconception, right? Because megawatts data center or gigawatts data center consuming a lot of energy, water, utility, power, everything. People scared about the data center build will be increase the utility cost or water cost or like some environmental challenge. I think as the IT professional or data center professional, we all maybe we need to do a little bit more community education to the people who are not familiar with this industry, right? And by the way, on that case, I believe like the company basically say we're going to generate like almost like 500 jobs, for the local community. And you can imagine how much tax it will be, to the town, right? It's almost like I think, $100 million there. So when I listen to this news, I feel sad. Why? Because I feel like, okay, this is something we should be working, to work together with the community. But it's a very hard conflict. On the business wise, there's a lot of generation for the revenue for the company, also for the local community. On our side, because the people concerned about the oldest thing that is they worry about is the utility cost, the water cost, and also the environment. So that's something I hope we can do both. We can we can help with the education, the local community, better adapt to the data center building for the future.
Yeah, I've noticed the same thing in our local community in South Florida, about an hour north of Miami. There's a big data center project that's being highly contested now called Project Tango. And I went to the town hall meeting to see what 500 really angry residents look like. And they've raised some really good questions, and it leaves a lot of need to improve how community benefits are communicated in even the split between like, okay, there's may not be as many permanent jobs inside the data center, but there's dozens of different businesses in the ecosystem that are vendors of that data center that will be creating jobs, in some cases, 6-figure jobs, like really, really high paying jobs in cooling, and plumbing and electricians and fiber optics and managed service provider. It's pretty significant. But yeah, I think this is I don't know that it's a global problem right now, quite as acute as it is in the US, because there's already been a lot of sustainability culture in other parts of the world that have tempered this need to educate. But yeah, I think there's a lot of people in the data center industry right now that are kind of like deer between the headlights of okay, like what do we do to figure it out? And then it's not enough to just say, well, we're doing this because we said we're doing this. There's you need to win over the communities with all this. And I think a lot of the playbook for especially on the data center developer side is going to be devoted to spending significantly more resources on this in the coming months, in the next 1 to 3 years, than they're currently spending on it.
Yeah.
Yong, this has been a fantastic discussion. I've really enjoyed having you back on the podcast again. I really appreciate you sharing all these practical insights about ecosystem coordination and energy realities and what sets the right tone and who different kinds of conversations with different kinds of stakeholders and the changing dynamics of AI infrastructure at the intersection of go-to-market strategy. For everyone listening, I've been speaking today with Yong Tan, who is the Data Center Sales Director for AI Infrastructure at Supermicro. Yong's based in the Boston, Massachusetts area. Yong, if someone wants to learn more about what you're working on or connect, is LinkedIn the best place to start?
Yeah, 100%. Definitely, LinkedIn is a good source. Reach out to me. I'm happy to, have a call. Also book a meeting, introduce myself and Supermicro. I mean, I'm looking forward to help anybody who really want to go to this, AI infrastructure world. Also, even like how to say new grads or an early career students, I really believe, right? This is something I feel very passionate about that for the next generation that in US, because I see so much booming for the AI data center. For for someone who love engineering, who like to really do tangible thing. Actually, the AI data center is a very good opportunity for the next maybe 10 to 15 years.
And it's just a matter of how early we can intercept those students long before they declare their major in college, long before they even decide which college they're going to go and what they're actually going to study. It seems that that's getting decided earlier and earlier and earlier.
Yes.
I think we talked about this before. I see kids, at least in the area we're in, starting to decide on taking electives in school as early as like middle school and junior high school. So like around age 10 or 11, they're already starting. So we need to reach them early.
Yeah. So I also told some young kids, say, go to the major with the mechanical electrical engineer. That's very critical because on power for sure is engineering, right? So I really believe like that's something going to help you to really kind of landing on some good job in the future because this is the demand is too much, is so many.
Yeah. And everyone's looking for the magic advice to help future-proof their careers. So yeah, this is all fantastic. What's your favorite resource for someone that wants to learn about what Supermicro does in the data center? Would you just send them to the website? Is there a special area of the website or social media?
Yeah, so I mean, you definitely can Google search with Supermicro Computing. We have the website, on the website we have all the products that we can offering, and also LinkedIn. We have a dedicated, company profile for LinkedIn. You have a lot of good chance to watch a lot of good products that we're offering today, and also product review. I mean, the last is reach out to me. I definitely can, feel free to share our products, to to give everybody.
Well, really appreciate you joining me again. This has been fantastic, and been watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
Thank you, Joshua, and appreciate it, and I enjoy our conversation. Thank you for having me again.
You're very welcome, and thank you for joining me. Most data center GTM teams are flying completely blind. 83% of your buyer's journey is happening before they even speak with someone from your sales team. The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is powered by DCSMI. We've studied over 1,900 industry leaders to build a diagnostic framework that identifies exactly why deals fall apart and revenue stalls. Stop guessing and start benchmarking. Subscribe now to our weekly Data Center GTM briefing at www.dcsmi.com/briefing. Again, that's dcsmi.com/briefing, BRIEFING.